evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info coming at you after the conclusion of the Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas, where unofficially pending the results of post-race inspection, Tyler Reddick has pulled off his first playoff victory of the season, coming back from what was a very strong run at Darlington last week. Good to see him pull that one off, although there were many drivers not too happy at the end there. Drivers such as Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson, who very much had the most dominant car of the race at different points. And then, of course, we have to talk about Martin Truex Jr. and his early exit that has not only put him in last place unofficially, pending the results of post-race inspection, but has also created definitely some intrigue here into the playoffs. Not necessarily a must-win scenario for Truex as things shook out, especially with the problems that Bubba Wallace faced after having a very strong run in the early stages of the race there. But a situation where he finds himself on the wrong side of the line at a race that he finished last in last year, which was his most recent last place run. So we'll definitely be talking about that, the Cup Series, Xfinity, and Truck Series portions of this weekend on the show tonight. We got trivia and some show and tell for you tonight. I'm also going to try out a different segment here, especially about the Truck Series finish back on Friday night. So we'll play around this. We got the second screen set up here and some stuff to kind of work with on that as well. So I also got some very good comments on last week's show here. One of them was to make sure that the screen cap here doesn't spoil the finish of the show if anybody's just looking at the thumbnail. So that's going to be something that I'm going to look to kind of keep doing in the future here. And again, anything like that on the show here or any of the other videos I produce, things like that bother you, or if they're irritating or just need to be done better, let me know, because otherwise I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And I definitely don't want to make it something difficult there. So hopefully we'll have some of that kicked in for the show here tonight. Understand we had the IndyCar finale a little bit earlier today, a little bit far from here at LastCar headquarters, but still in Northern California there with the outcome of that. Didn't watch that really during the race, but heard little drips and drags there during that. I'm not sure how much we'll talk about that on the show tonight, but again, the focus will be primarily on the Cup Series, Xfinity, and Truck Series portion from this weekend. Again, Tyler Reddick was in and around the top 5, top 10 most of this race today. Again, had a fine showing last week. And the number 45 team, as was mentioned during the broadcast, now with wins with 3 different drivers in these last couple of seasons here, with the exception of the spring race earlier this year that was settled between Hamlin and Larson. Having Kurt Busch's last win here, Bubba Wallace winning this race last year, and now Tyler Reddick, the new driver, the number 45, pulling off the victory this time around. That team just seems to have this place figured out. Bubba was my pick for this week's race. I thought the 23 team was going to be a pretty good one to pick. And indeed, he was running second for a lot of this race. Unfortunately, a flat right rear tire, as we saw with a number of other drivers having in this particular race, ended up being the consequence of it. I posed a question during the race here if this was a situation that we were going to have another Goodyear situation with just bad tires or the teams doing bad things to them. That seems to be the endless debate in racing in one way or another, especially in NASCAR with the Goodyear exclusivity here in the sport. Again, different situations. Truex's turned out to be a puncture in the tread of the tire. Kudos to the reporters there on scene, as well as James Small himself posting a picture of the flat there on the tire. But a disastrous set of circumstances for him. After qualifying third in the race, looked to be having a good chance at it here. Definitely showed speed in practice and qualifying. However, Truex ended up dropping out just after a few laps into the race. I understood there was a little bit of controversy about whether or not he should have been towed directly to the garage area. As we know, under the crash clock, if a car is towed to the garage or pulls into the garage while on the clock, their day is done. We have seen situations where a tow truck would bring a car to their pit stall and allow further work to be done. Jeff Gluck was very good in bringing up the rule that basically, if the repairs are too serious for the car to even be moving, they're not going to even try to bring the car to the pit stall. And indeed, Truex on his radio transmission did indicate, look, just take it to the garage. We're done. And that was around the time. Unfortunately, the NASCAR Drive onboard shot, at least for me, it wasn't working. I don't know why. So I didn't know where that timed in terms of before he was into the garage area, but it seemed like that was a situation that must have come up before they went to the garage there. So he was towed straight in, and then ultimately that was the end of his day. Not the first time that we've seen a driver qualify that well and finish in last. Of course, we had Denny Hamlin, his teammate there, start on pole at Sears Point and was eliminated in a late race accident there. But of course, now in the playoffs and have the regular season champion, and thankfully the number of points that he's amassed this year, minimizing the damage as much as possible so that it's within a few points of the bubble. I believe it was 7 points from the last time they showed the actual rankings there. Definitely something that's doable at Bristol, but you don't want to have to be in a situation there where you have to pass 7 cars and at the same time try to make sure your car is going to be in one piece, especially at a track where, again, he finished last year when several teams had steering rack problems. We saw this with him and Ty Gibbs and other drivers there as well. But regardless, it's going to be very interesting among the storylines that we're going to be seeing this next Saturday here at Bristol. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting for sure. Also, again, the other tire situation that ended up being significant in the outcome of this one, of course, was the flat tire on Chris Buescher, that seemed to turn a situation where Denny Hamlin seemed to have this win pretty well in his back pocket, at the end of this here with a pretty big lead in the Yahoo Toyota rather this time around. However, the late race pit strategy did end up rearing its ugly head. You had Daniel Suarez stay out with no tire change. You had Eric Jones come out there after running in the top 5, really a good portion of this race, certainly the top 10. A fine showing again from the Legacy Motor Club to see back-to-back runs here. Jones was very good at Darlington before some issues there on pit road, and this time around able to get the 3rd place finish for him. But regardless, he ends up in a situation where he gets in front of Denny Hamlin on the last lap. Hamlin can't make a bid at Reddick there at the front of the field. Would Hamlin been able to do anything with Reddick there if that hadn't happened? It's hard to say. It seemed like Hamlin was really kind of catching there at turn 3, just kind of ran out of time there at the same time. But ultimately, that restart did allow a situation where anybody else on 4 tires in particular was going to have a good run there at the end. Also salvaged a decent run for Kyle Busch, even with the 2-tire stop for him. But Reddick coming out there, pulling off a good 3-wide battle. Eric Jones got held up by Joey Logano there a little bit, and that ended up being the difference. Reddick, your winner. Denny Hamlin in the 2nd spot. Eric Jones in 3rd. Kyle Larson in the 4th spot. Joey Logano rounds out your top 5, pulling up the rest of the results here. Kyle Busch behind Chase Elliott. Elliott in the 6th spot there. A little bit of contact between Elliott and Kyle Larson coming off pit road. No doubt that portion of Twitter that's been keeping track of any incidental contact between those two drivers is going to have plenty of material this week, at least on that little moment there. Kyle Busch in 7th, Christopher Bell in 8th, Brad Keselowski with another great showing here. RFK Racing, despite the disappointment of what happened with Buescher there towards the end, putting in another nice showing. And Alex Bowman rounding out the top 10 at the same time. Looked like Kevin Harvick is going to have a shot at perhaps having another good run here at Kansas. He's come back from some adversity at this track in the past before, but unfortunately ends up just outside the top 10 in the 11th spot there. Other drivers give a call too. Ty Gibbs in a backup car coming from the back of the field up to the 14th spot, so kudos to him, and other drivers there as well. I want to mention Carson Hocevar. I was just looking at him in the rankings here. Saw him about as high as 15th there in the number 42 car, following up the solid run he had at Darlington last week. Again, 20th place finish, even after the news of John Hunter Nemechek getting in the 42, which I personally am pretty excited about. I think the switch to Toyota and the upward trajectory that team's already showing late this season, I think all signs point to a good indication there with that. I don't think it's going to be the same as when he was in the second front row entry in 2020. And again, I know that, it's one thing to measure the, 6 wins now this year that Nemechek has in the Xfinity Series and the challenge of running the next-gen car. But again, I think Nemechek had a good run in the number 45 last year when he was stepping in there for Bubba Wallace at Homestead. I thought, again, the race didn't go that well, but he qualified well and he practiced well. Who's to say that things can't turn out as well there with the Legacy group? We're going to find out what the situation is going to be next year. But in the meantime, he's got an Xfinity championship to go for, too. We'll talk more about that in the Xfinity portion of the show. But Hocevar, I mean, this has absolutely been his year, whether it's been breaking through with his, now as an established winner in the Truck Series, getting his first opportunities in the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series, running very well in the Spire Motorsports entry, and then getting in Spire's Cup car at Gateway and running better than Corey LaJoie did in Chase Elliott's car until the brake failure. Nothing you could do about that, just a different situation. Comes back now and gets in this 42 car, has a good run at Darlington, and then comes back out here again, and another solid run at another very difficult track. Kansas has really turned into one of these races where just anything can happen at any moment, and as brutal as this track is on tires, and as much debris can fall out there, you can have anything happen in there and still get a decent finish. There was even a moment, I think a clip that was posted on NASCAR's Twitter earlier today, where Hocevar was dead sideways through turns 1 and 2 and managed to reel that car back in. So a fine job there for Hocevar at the same time. Let's see here. Looking further back, Michael McDowell now in a very much a must-win situation. I believe he's 40 points out in the last spot there in the playoffs. Not as terrible of a start as he had in 2021 with the last place run in the Southern 500 to kind of kick things off. But regardless, having the wreck at Darlington this year that put him a little bit further up in the rankings, and now 26th place finish right behind his teammate. Todd Gilliland is actually 2 laps down very early in this race and came back to finish in the lucky dog spot, so kind of a recovery of his own there. But regardless, it's going to be a very difficult situation for McDowell. He's had some good runs at Bristol, but he's going to need more than that to be able to make it to the next round. So that's another one to look at. Sheldon Creed kept his nose clean out there in the Cup race, which is more than we could say probably from his Xfinity performance yesterday. It seemed like he was involved in a couple altercations during that race. But Creed finishing in the 29th spot, which actually is pretty solid there for the Live Fast Motorsports team. Understood that this car was actually prepared at the Richard Childress shop along with Ty Dillon's number 77. It's interesting to see them finishing nose to tail in 28th and 29th in the final results here at the same time. Bubba Wallace, after the flat tire and a toe link issue after getting into the wall, loses 4 laps ultimately. I think he was 5 laps down at the first part of the incident, but comes back and gets one of those laps back, finishes in 32nd. Austin Dillon, J.J. Yaley, Harrison Burton, and again, Martin Truex rounding out your bottom 5 in the results on this one. And again, I know this race had moments there where it had, again, long green flag runs. It was nice to see things kind of play out a little bit. I do think a lot of the cautions in this seem to take an unusually long time. I know that's not necessarily something new. It's definitely part of the debate over actually having stage cautions and what purpose they even need to serve these days. But definitely having those kind of stretch things out a little bit. Even when we had an above average number of cautions, it's kind of weird that we actually even did have some stretch runs during this race, especially after how many cautions we had in Xfinity and trucks, and then kind of the first portion of this race here as well. But just a little bit of everything there. But yeah, I'm glad it was able to be. I thought it was decent enough race. Maybe not the most entertaining race this year. And I don't like, when you have these late race restarts at the same time there, because it gets to be red light, green light. At least they solved it in one restart there. Yes, it did go into overtime and everything, but I guess that could be it could have been a lot worse. But certainly for Denny Hamlin, that was not a situation that he was hoping for at the same time. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I've seen the questions here about J.J. Yaley. I didn't know what the situation was, but I saw him, just drop back. He was about 30th place, I think, when he fell out. But we'll see in the final results here what the actual reason out was for him. But Harrison Burton definitely bounced off the wall there. Austin Dillon had that damage from him getting off turn 2 and bouncing off the wall and dropping a lot of debris out there. That ended up being the incident where William Byron spun out, and it may have affected the handling of that car from the discussion that we saw in the broadcast booth, maybe affecting the undercarriage or the strakes there on the diffuser. Hard exactly to tell, especially, with during the race itself. But I'm sure it didn't do the car any favors there and how all that played out. Let's see here. But that's definitely part of that race. I saw a couple comments here on the shirt. Yes, I have not changed course from being a Buffalo Bills fan. I am very much aware of that and getting ready for their Monday night game. I figured I'd bring this out with the start of football season. But big thanks over to Brent Wentz over at the Days Gone By shop there. I saw this turn up a while back, and I'll tell you what, I'm just a sucker for this shade of orange. I don't know how well it shows on camera, but it pops just really nice. But kind of a weird thing. You got to kind of do a T-pose to get the Elliott name here on that. And it's got Marino's name on the back of it. I thought that was pretty hip. I'm always a sucker for anything from Jerry Nadeau's Elliott Marino years, or year rather, half a season there in the 98 season. It's one of those stories that kind of gets brought up there as much as the Tabasco fiasco and other sponsorships and other efforts that maybe aren't as well known today because it didn't last that long in the sport, despite having a lot of financial backing behind it there. But yeah, that's still one that stands out to me. Every time that something comes up there from that 13 effort, even though again I'm not into the division rivals there with the Dolphins. I know they got their share there too. Yeah, I'm a sucker for that for sure. So definitely wanted to bring that out for today here at the same time. Oh, thank you for the comments there on the Chuck Bound video. I'll talk about that with the other videos from this week. You got to definitely talk about the Mach 1 incorporated one, and we have kind of some more updates on that too. But yeah, any rate, let me get into. I know there were some concerns on last week's show. I know I did kind of go through the race reviews kind of quickly last week. For the Cup, Xfinity, and the truck shows. That was primarily because, again, it was kind of late at night. I didn't want to stretch the show that long. But again, anybody that's new to the show here, I know we only got a few people in here today. We've got 50 people in here, so thank you for tuning in. But anybody that's new here, if you have any questions about the show or anything from the race weekend or anything I may have skipped over or not addressed here, definitely mention it in the chat. We can jump into that there at the same time. One other driver I want to mention from today's race here, Cole Custer was doing really well. There was one point where he was 22nd, and I don't think that was during a pit road sequence. It seemed like he was actually having a fine run. Let me actually look where he ended up. Hopefully he didn't drop too far back. No, 24th. So last car in the lead lap, 6.4 seconds back of the leader. But still, yeah, finished the race under power. Especially given the bad luck that he had in Saturday's Xfinity race running over that tire carcass that put him into the outside wall. Good to see a good run out of that Rick Ware entry. Unfortunately, didn't see both of them up there with, again, the issues that J.J. Yaley had at the same time, but that would be another one to certainly talk about there. So, yeah. And Carson Hocevar is going to be in the 42 next week at Bristol, too, isn't he? That's still... I assume it's going to be a week-to-week thing, but I'll be very interested to see what he can do there. And again, talk about some really difficult tracks to kind of start your career at. I know he did the Gateway race, but to then go over this team, I mean, Gateway was challenging enough already, certainly in mechanical natures there with the cars falling apart in that race. But to have, to go to Darlington, they go to Kansas, and then you got Bristol here, and in playoff races, too, on top of that, while you're also competing for the Truck Series championship. Admittedly, the Truck Series races are at least spread out a bit more, so at least you don't have as much of those, direct conflicts. Yes, they had the Truck Series race this week, and they got to do a pretty quick turnaround to the Bristol race next week, but things kind of space out from there if it turns out that he ends up running some more races there too. I don't know if we're going to see John Hunter Nemechek run earlier races. I would imagine the Toyota contract will probably keep him from running the Chevy team, even when they're already signed to run for this program next year. I really enjoyed a lot of the throwback schemes that people were kind of suggesting. Certainly the Bell South scheme. I mean, Nemechek running the 42 again. I know we're kind of cycling back to this here again, but that's got to be really cool. Yes, under a completely different organization, but definitely that connection there to the old Bell South team that Nemechek drove for. Won his first race at New Hampshire in 1999. John Hunter Nemechek was there with him You see the other clip from the Bobby Ginn video, where you see him a little bit older in the 2004 win at Kansas. And that was also shown, there's some pictures of that during the broadcast today. They actually did a decent job kind of covering that. That'll be another interesting storyline next year. And again, I think that, I think even if John Hunter were back at front row again in that 38 entry, we've seen Todd Gilliland have some decent runs in that car, and also Zane Smith swapping in and out of it too. I think even if he ended up with a similar situation at the exact same program he had from his last Cup Series attempt, you probably do a lot better. But again, who knows? Who knows? There's a lot of moving parts to that, but it's definitely a storyline I'm excited about, because I do think that despite the number of wins John Hunter's had, I think he's still a pretty underappreciated talent in the Xfinity Series. And I still feel like these broadcasts are not taking him seriously as a championship contender. I know we just wrapped up the regular season, but it's every one of these broadcasts, it always seems like it's Austin Hill, which I agree. I think he should definitely be one of the four for sure. Not only for his super speedway prowess, but the fact that he's able to actually do better at other tracks and pull off wins at places like Pocono, and really capitalize on wins that slip through other people's fingers. But then Justin Allgaier and Cole Custer, they're just so inconsistent. Having, this problem or that problem there that kind of just ends up being a problem, getting across the line. They can seem completely untouchable at one moment and then just completely vulnerable the next. I think Nemechek is able to kind of, resourcefully get some decent runs out there, even if it's not 100% good day out there. Now that could very well be the championship four by the time we get to Phoenix. But again, I think John Hunter is going to be really tough, at least as tough as Ty Majeski's been in the Truck Series championship so far. Whether or not that there's any superpower or something that NASCAR inspectors are going to suss out like they did with Majeski's effort, that remains to be seen. But again, I think consistently, ever since he was second in the Daytona opener and won at Fontana, again, I think he is definitely served notice to the rest of the field that he's to be taken seriously. Now, on top of this, you got the Xfinity return of Dale Earnhardt Jr. For next week at Bristol, so that'll be another thing to look forward to. Has to qualify the car on time, which was interesting that was brought up during the broadcast here as well. But that was definitely another part of that. But yeah, I think we can go ahead and jump into the Xfinity discussion here as we're doing that. Probably be good. We're already moving to that. At the same time, John Hunter did pull off the victory there, leading 154 of the 200 laps at Kansas yesterday. Brandon Jones in second spot ahead of Sheldon Creed. Parker Kligerman punches his ticket into the playoffs. Congratulations to him and the Big Machine Racing effort. This is a team, we talked a lot about them on the show here with the great runs they had here and there with Jay Buford before they parted ways. I wasn't impressed with a lot of the Cup Series regulars they brought on there to pull off some wins. I know teams got to do what they need to do, but, again, I think in the Xfinity Series, it needs to be much more about developing programs as organically as you can, much like you're developing the talents there. But then to land Parker Kligerman this full-time ride, where he'd been out of full-time racing for so long and working his tail off there, also being a broadcaster and a great asset to what NBC and USA have been putting together, to get this ride. And good days and bad days all this year. Most recently, the spin at Darlington that put him in a position where it was down to him and Riley Herbst for the last spot in the playoffs. And poor Riley Herbst. I mean, I feel terrible for all the bad luck he's had, especially this year. But in a perfect world, you'd like to think that every driver can have their day in the sun there. But when it comes down to two people and you only got one spot left, you're going to have a winner and you're going to have somebody that's losing on the other side of it there. But again, a great effort for Parker Kligerman getting that fourth place finish there. One of his best finishes of this year, really, on top of everything else, to get a good run out there and get the 48 team in. And then, we'll see what happens starting at Bristol this week and how that plays out in the playoffs. So congratulations to that effort. And that's certainly good to see. Austin Hill, again, mentioning his consistency this year, finishing in 5th. Josh Berry in 6th. Brett Moffitt 7th. Derek Kraus in 8th after the number swap there in the colleague effort. The number 10 team going for the Xfinity Series Owners Championship. They did not have a good opening round here with Daniel Hemrick having electrical issues that dropped him towards the back of the field there. Joe Graf Jr. back in the Joe Gibbs Racing effort, kept his nose clean, had a decent finish out there, taking the 9th spot, so great effort by him. And Kaz Grala rounding out the top 10. Sam Hunt Racing continues to be just as impressive as they've been in these last couple of years with whatever drivers they have, and their Kaz being their full-time guy. But a decent effort there, just ahead of Parker Retzlaff, who, again, is really taking the reins there over at the Jordan Anderson team. Yes, he has his teammate Jeb Burton right behind him in the 12th spot, but regardless, Retzlaff has been easily one of the most impressive drivers of this season now as a full-timer. Yes, outside the playoffs, but I wouldn't rule him out of potentially pulling off a victory or another top 5 here in the stretch run here too. So we'll find out what happens. Another team that I was very happy to see have a good performance, and I mentioned this in the article yesterday, SS Greenlight Racing, the Bobby Dotter effort. They have had so much bad luck this year. I believe they're still leading the Last Car Owners Championship on the Xfinity Series side. But to see Mason Massey come home 16th, of course, he had that great top 10 run at New Hampshire earlier this year. And Dawson Cram comes back from a DNQ last week in the Alpha Prime effort. The Alpha Prime number 44 teams had all kinds of problems with mechanical issues and DNQs these last couple weeks, but they're fighting the good fight out there. Cram comes over to the SS Greenlight team. His sponsor, Titan Construction, stays with him, so good commitment there from the sponsor there as well. And a 21st place finish may not look like that much, especially with being 2 laps down, but keep in mind, it looked like from the replay of the accident that ended up determining last place in this race, that he was actually turned into the outside wall in the tri-oval there and managed to come back from that and still had a decent finish. I think that's very impressive. Another driver I was very happy for here too, Leland Honeyman, after he didn't qualify in the number 44 in this race here, came back out there. Tommy Joe Martins really stepped up to the plate. And again, to be clear about this story here too, it was his decision to put Leland in the 66, worked out a deal with Carl Long after Timmy Hill qualified the car. I know there's a lot of discussion out there about Timmy swapping out of the car after getting the car in the field. I feel partly responsible for that because I did cover the situation there with him and Joe Graf at Fontana last year. I'm sure there was a similar deal that was worked out there to make that worthwhile there for him at the same time. But in this situation here, Honeyman actually doesn't just get in the car and have to start at the back of the field, but climbs up to finish in the 26th spot there. Great solid run for him. Hopefully something that helps Carl Long's effort out because they've had just a ton of DNQs this year. Even in races where they've only had 39 cars for 38 spots, they've more often than not found themselves in that position where they've been missing races. Now it's kind of shifted over to kind of that 44 team here after Timmy Hill getting that car in the show the last couple of weeks. But a fine showing out of him as well. So I had a chance to talk to Honeyman briefly at Sonoma earlier this year. He's a good kid. I hate that he has some bad luck here and there. But again, sometimes you got to miss some races before you start making them and get some good performances out there at the same time. So kudos to him at the same time there too. Looking through the rest of the field here. We talked about the SS Greenlight effort. We could talk about the last place battle here too. Unfortunate deal for Kyle Weatherman and also their sponsor Tweaker Energy Drinks. It was good to see his sponsor return to the sport after a bit of an absence. We'd seen this sponsor, I believe it was 2016, last time he sponsored a Cup car, and 2014 in the Xfinity Series. So it had been a few years. To me, that doesn't feel like that long ago, but especially in how much the sport has changed over these years, that's definitely a big difference there. But Kyle Weatherman had the sponsor, had a good qualifying run, started 19th in the race, was still running about the top 15 there when he was collected in the incident. Sheldon Creed and Sam Mayer banged doors. Mayer spins out right into Weatherman's path, had nowhere to go and ran right into him there. So that ends up being your last place finisher there. So an unfortunate early exit there, especially for Mario Gosselin's team. They're another one of those programs there that seem to really get some good cars out there. We saw that with Josh Williams in this race, finishing in the 13th spot in the 92. Williams is one of the most dogged people I've seen in the garage area, determined to get a car back out there if there's any chance at all. He'll be throwing elbows as well as much as everybody else on the team there. It really deserves more coverage than it's been getting, because I saw that personally at Sears Point when they had mechanical issues out there, and it probably couldn't have been more than just 1 or 2 laps before they got it back out there, which was very impressive. There was also some frustration there with other drivers here involved. Not only the fact that we had several big names down there, Daniel Hemrick, Sammy Smith, Cole Custer, and Sam Mayer in the bottom 5 right after Kyle Weatherman. But then the early incident there with Nick Lights, I know that he was talking about the how embarrassed he felt and frustrated with the incident in turn 1, crosses the nose of Anthony Alfredo's car, puts them both in the outside wall. Alfredo comes back. He actually had, I think, a decent finish at 27th spot. I mean, better than certainly dropping out of the race. But Nick Lights, not only that far back in 31st there at the finish, still finished the race under power, 6 laps down. Again, so easy on the starts of these races. I mean, I can't imagine any of being in that situation where you have very limited practice, very limited qualifying, and then you're jumping into this playoff race, even if you're towards the back of the field like Lights was in the 30th spot. Still just making just a wrong move at the wrong time, get some damage to the right front of the car. But again, kudos to the team for putting some durable cars together and the driver for staying in it and finishing the race under power. Hopefully things will turn out better for him going forward in whatever other races he makes. But Lights, first car he passes was the Kyle Weatherman machine there after the incident with Mayer, and that ends up being your last place battle there at the same time. Brett Moffitt, I thought, was a car that would look like he was going to spin out a few times during that race, too. The 25 car seemed like it was absolutely a handful. So mentioning him earlier, finishing in the 7th spot, kudos to him, the Kevin Zawinski AM Racing effort there. A good effort there out of the 25 team. And we'll see. Again, no slouch on the short tracks either. Could be a story coming up at Bristol next week. Young Pablo, thank you for your comment there as well. I got to ask, what in the world would it take for Austin Dillon to ever compete for a championship? Well, he'd have to qualify for the championship, first of all. But, again, it's, there's been videos and already commentary about this already, about trying to, see how much further down the line he can make it. He seems to have a real sense for pulling off, these crown jewel victories and picking those up too. Luckily getting, a couple other wins. But it's just like anything else. It's consistency and being able to win under, specific circumstances. I mean, if you're in a must-win situation, being able to get to the level of like a Christopher Bell that can be able to do that last year, or other drivers we've seen that in the past. But you see some drivers that seem to consistently either miss the playoffs or make the playoffs, get eliminated in the first round. It's the same thing that Michael McDowell, I think, is facing right now. Whatever he would need is going to be very much the same situation with him too. So that'll be another one to kind of look at the same time. Andrew Bremner, you're asking if Custer comes back to Cup? Possibly. The problem with any driver coming back to Cup right now is again, that artificial ceiling that we're having of the actual charters. The fact that we're not getting new charters added, the fact that it's still cost prohibitive to run open teams beyond just a couple of starts. I mean, even when you got Project 91 winning a race this year, and the fact that they're not able to branch out and try to run some more ovals or bring more international stars out there, the fact that they can't make it work, it really shows how much more difficult it is for even smaller teams than that. So that's another deal. So even with Trackhouse support, a Trackhouse team, it's I think that's kind of the problem. But yeah, potentially, if they're looking for more stability at the Rick Ware team, it depends on what their plans are going forward. Obviously, the events of this year have kind of turned things upside down for them. I think J.J. Yaley has been a nice bit of stability for him, especially that top 10 run at Atlanta. I think it would be silly to swap him out. But if maybe you have Custer as a full-time in the 51 and Yaley full-time in the 15, I think Rick Ware could do very well with that. I think that would maybe shore up that support with the Stewart-Haas effort there. Would that be a materially better situation than what Custer had at Stewart-Haas in the 41? I don't know about that. But I do think that there's the other problem you have there too, is you got a whole developing group of Xfinity drivers, and they're just starting to find different rides. if you got John Hunter in the 42, if you got Josh Berry going to Harvick's car, and whatever else is going to be worked out, you're only going to have so many other rides available depending on what the current group is going to be doing. We don't know about Eric Almirola. We don't know about other teams that are out there. So yeah, you got other Xfinity guys that I think are very deserving. I think Austin Hill is very deserving of getting a full-time Cup ride, and I think it would probably be a higher priority than Cole Custer, I think, frankly. So I think that would be another one to look at. So that's where you're going to really have to figure it out, is like any of these guys that would, either whether it's a first time or a second time chance of getting up there. What would that work out? Oh, Haley's driving for Rick Ware. Oh gosh, that's right. Thank you for reminding me, Charles. Yeah, exactly. So that's right. I completely forgot about that story. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, well then that wouldn't be possible. So I guess we can't even really think about that. I guess the only other option is what's left for the other Rick Ware car to be Haley's teammate. Gosh, I completely forgot about that. Yeah, thank you. That's absolutely different. So again, even we're getting the point there where Rick Ware entries are actually just, are already filled up too. That just points out even more how much of a challenge it is for these guys to be full-time Cup drivers, because that's really the thing. And that's what and let's not forget about Shane Van Gisbergen too. I know that I spoke out about this after Chicago, where the goal seems to be a full-time Cup Series driver. And it's like, well, isn't that still a bridge too far? I mean, don't you want to at least kind of build a team around him that could run other road courses and maybe some ovals, kind of like what Boris said did with No Fear Racing? Doesn't that seem like something that still should be the goal? But I mean, has the charter system so fundamentally altered the business structure that if you're not going full-time Cup racing, it's not even really worth looking at, if you got the talent to pull off Cup Series wins. But I don't think that's what the situation there. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, Custer or Yaley, it can only be one. In that one, I think Yaley is actually more competitive than maybe it may seem. I think Yaley has proven himself to be a really good, consistent driver out there. And he's had some good runs this year. So he showed he's been able to make the adjustment to the next gen car and not wad up a lot of equipment. I don't know what happened today. It didn't seem like it was an accident. It must have been some mechanical situation that took him out of the race. I suppose we'll find out once we get the final results up here. But yeah, exactly. But yes, thank you, Charles, for bringing that up. Let's see here. I guess we could jump into... Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I think the Bills game will be close to the Jets too, Andrew. I was just looking at the comments here earlier. Yes, I see a lot of comments on the Rise of the Field Fillers thing. I definitely want to talk about that. So let me go ahead and jump into that here too. Big thanks to everyone for checking out the next episode of Rise of the Field Fillers. I'm so glad to finally get that online. I know it's been a very long wait since the last actual team profile we've done in that series. That was February of last year, I believe, that we did episode 9 on Score Motorsports with Hermie Sadler. Yes, we did do episode 10.5 on the All-Star race and kind of a review of a lot of the other teams from the Field Filler series, so I was glad to get that out. But even that wasn't that long ago compared to this one here. But this Larry Gunselman one was really enjoyable to put together. Big thanks to Brian Hallman, first of all, for the pictures, the material that he provided for that to really kind of contextualize the story. Big thanks to Captain Ron at Lefty Lucy Righty Tighty 32 on YouTube for getting me in touch with Larry Gunselman himself, because he provided a fantastic interview. I was very pleased by the response to it. I think this one is probably one of the more popular episodes in this series, right up there with, I think, the Andy Belmont, the Carl Long ones. Those seem to be the ones that have really done good numbers there in terms of viewership. But very enjoyable. And I think what's really cool with Larry's interview is it's another one of these where you have just such a bizarre cross-section of backgrounds that these drivers have had. I think nowadays it's so easy to hear about, an average driver that's a big name today. Maybe they start running go-karts when they're 5 years old. They get into late models and bandoleros, and they work their way up, and they, maybe they get into modifieds, or maybe they get into, dirt racing. there's more or less, one of a couple of different predictable paths that get people up there to whether they break into the Truck Series or ARCA, then do Xfinity, and then finally into the Cup Series. In this particular group, I mean, gosh, you just have everything. You got Larry Gunselman with his background in aeronautics, working at Boeing, still works at Boeing. And we don't have the full story of Larry in this video. I'll tell you more about that in a little bit here too. You got his background. You got Hermes Sadler with his background as a businessman and in wrestling and in politics now that he has his interest. You got James Finch in his construction business. You have Kirk Shelmerdine as Dale Earnhardt's crew chief. All these different drivers and teams with radical backgrounds. Even somebody like Morgan Shepherd, that has been a longtime Cup Series veteran, had a very interesting path to getting into the Cup Series himself at the very early stages of that too, back at a time where you didn't really have the same development into the sport. You just kind of jumped into the Cup Series and maybe ran the occasional race here and there and tried to kind of make a name for yourself, and then kind of branched out from there into the Xfinity and the Truck Series. These are stories that, maybe have been told, but maybe not completely understood. I think the challenge with Larry Gunselman's in particular, you'll notice a lot of the clips in that video, you don't really have the audio for them, because a lot of times this car would be going by and qualifying and the broadcasters would just be talking about something else, or they just, mentioned very little about this team. This team seemed to have an unusual amount of mystery around it. This one right up there with WW Motorsports, the Stanton Barrett one, which is the episode that's still on the back burner. I'll try to remember that I've been getting. I want to put a pin in that too before I get back to that, because I definitely want to talk about that too. But yeah, it just seemed like there was a lot of mystery about this team, and I really wanted to understand it. And Larry so much of this video was built around Larry's interview, because he really cleared up a lot of the mystery about this and how that team came together, and the fact that it did have that direct connection to the Mach 1 team from the late 1980s, which I had no idea. I remember this team even back then in 2004, and it was really intriguing because this team seemed to be doing pretty well compared to a lot of the field fillers. You understand this from some of the race results that are brought up in that video, where they would run a full race at Richmond, or where they would run full races at Fontana, where it was Lucas Oil's hometown. And then this year, it really brought it full circle. I didn't anticipate it taking till this year to be made, but then to have that storyline with Kyle Busch winning the first race for Lucas Oil as a sponsor, now with Richard Childress, and to pull off the victory, the last race at Fontana, where Larry Gunselman's first start at Fontana was the first Winston West race there in 1997, part of the inaugural race weekend, where Joe Nemechek was on the pole in the Bell South car, kind of bring that full circle, and Jeff Gordon won the first race out there. It was very much tied into that history of that track, a track that sadly is now in the process of being demolished. So, it was good to be able to kind of tie that in there. And I didn't anticipate that. It just kind of came together that way. But that's where it was really enjoyable to kind of bring that up. And I wanted to kind of, especially, and then of course the other big connection there with Mach 1 is of course its connection to Front Row Motorsports. And now fresh off their most recent victory at Indianapolis and Michael McDowell in the playoffs. Yes, will the playoff run extend past Bristol? We're not going to know till next week. It's certainly an uphill climb now with them the lowest seed. That was a big reason I wanted to kind of prioritize this. I really wanted to make sure this one was out while McDowell was still in the playoffs here in the first couple of weeks. So I'm glad I was able to get that back out and to share that story at the same time. I'm also very pleased, and those of you in the Patreon are already aware of this as well. I was able to reach out to the other team owner, Chris Edwards, who was also very interested in that. I was able to hear from him and do an interview with him a while back. That interview was just off the record. We were just kind of just talking about the team there in general. But he enjoyed the video too. I'm glad he got a kick out of it. I'm in the process of working something out where we'll have an interview with both Larry and Chris Edwards there to kind of get even more stories about Mach 1. I think this turned out to be a very rich subject on this. And hopefully, we'll see where that goes, if it's something that turns into something you guys can all check out. We're kind of working that out this week here. Yeah, I think I'm very pleased with the response to it. I'm glad people have been sharing the video. Larry himself posted it on a Facebook group, so big thanks to him. If you're watching this tonight, Larry, yeah, I thought it was great. It was connections to so many stories, and that's why I couldn't wait to get this one out there and to have an understanding of everything from why Mike Mittler ran the number 63 in the Truck Series, a connection with Jack Roush, a connection with Carl Edwards, a connection with, again, Front Row Motorsports, and again, all the way to Lucas Oil and Kyle Busch's win at Fontana earlier this year. This is a team, that we talk about the interconnectivity of a lot of these teams. And it's not just they were in their own universe and they didn't have any bearing on things that happened later. You could see more current examples of it. You could see something like Phoenix Racing, where it gave Brad Keselowski a shot at his first Cup victory, which ended up being the only victory that Finch had in the Cup Series. You have a team like Carl Long's effort, where it's still out there in the Xfinity Series and still presenting opportunities for drivers like Leland Honeyman here in this week's Xfinity race. Mach 1 is very much the same element of that. Front Row kind of had its own organization that started up in 2004, but it really didn't get its footing until really they kind of merged with them into 2005, 2006. And, again, brought that 34 out, used the same font, basically, that Mach 1 had, is the same thing you see on the 34 car today, and the same shop, even. I know I'm bringing up a lot of details from the video. If you haven't seen it already, don't worry. There's way more details than that if you haven't seen the video, but definitely check it out here if you can on the channel here. And, again, a big thanks to everybody for checking that out there at the same time. I really enjoyed putting it together. And it is not the last episode of Rise of the Field Fillers. I'll tell you that right off the bat. The next team is revealed in that one. I won't bring that up here, but I will say that is being worked on at the same time. That's one of the other projects I'm working on. If you're ever interested in other updates on videos that I am working on before they come out, I don't really post it so much on social media because I want to make sure my Patreon members have access to that first and foremost. Usually by the time I talk about it on here, it's already been in the Patreon for a bit. But if you're interested in that, patreon.com/lastcaronbrock. If you join that for as little as $1 a month, you'll have access to those posts, as well as advanced access to videos that I narrate for NASCAR Man. If you're interested in advanced access for my videos, that's at the $5 level. And then there's bonus videos and other bonus content that's for the $10 and up members. And I'm working on other content there at the same time. So Rise of the Field Fillers is going to continue on. One of the videos that will be worked on is going to be a continuing story of Larry Gunselman. Those of you familiar with his career may already know of the one or two moments in his career later on in that time. That will be coming up later on, and more updates on that as we get to it. But we're just not there in the overall story of Rise of the Field Fillers yet. And you may notice this from some of the other episodes in the series as well. There's some that kind of go further on in the sport's history, but there's others that aren't quite as comprehensive. And some other people have noticed this too. As to what that means, you can probably glean that from the way I'm describing it. Basically what it means in the short term here, more episodes of that series, which I'm glad to do because I think it's easily the most popular series on it. It's easily the one I get the most comments about, the most questions about, and the most anticipation for when they come out. So I'm really pleased to get those out. I hope they won't take nearly as long as this episode did. That's why I'm trying to kind of stay busy with these other videos in the meantime so that at least you got other content to kind of enjoy there in the meantime. This brings me back to episode 10 of Rise of the Field Fillers. You notice, of course, I skipped this. This Mach 1 episode was episode 11. So episode 10 was delayed before doing the All-Star episode, which is why that's episode 10 and a half, basically. That episode on Stanton Barrett and WW Motorsports is still in the works. What I'd like to do, and I've already mentioned this in the Patreon before and other posts here, so this isn't a secret. That episode just, it's basically, I think it's at a pretty good level, but my confidence as to how, accurate certain details are, it's not quite to where I'm comfortable recording it yet. We're kind of up to the threshold there. We got a lot of good content in there. I got a lot of good clips. Brian Hallman's provided great pictures and interviews. We've got all the content there that it needs to be. What's missing is I'd like to do at least one more follow-up interview with Stanton Barrett and to kind of get that going there. So that's one thing that we're working on here. And we are working on that. Kind of just working this out. I think one thing that's excellent is that he's racing again, that we've seen Stanton run some Xfinity Series races. With that increases the possibility maybe we could do something face-to-face. That's what I really like to do too. If we end up doing a face-to-face interview, I think that will fill in the gaps that are in there. And Stanton has had a chance to see the script that I'd written so far. He had some notes on that, and I was totally cool with that. But we're going to need more clarification there to make sure it's like where it needs to be. The result of that video may even not be a Field Fillers episode, strictly speaking. It may not have that much focus on 2004. What it may end up being is it being actually a standalone video similar to the Chuck Bound video or the Buddy Arrington video, which really isn't that big of a difference. My approach to those videos are basically the same. The difference with Field Fillers is that I make 2004 a central focus, that I kind of build everything else around. So hopefully the story of Stanton Barrett and also his father, Stan Barrett, which I also did include in the script that I shared with him there, that I think is still going to be a video. It's just a matter, it could be, I could hear from him tomorrow and then we'll be right back on track. Or it could be 6 months from now. It could be a year from now. I don't know. He is just a very busy individual. I respect that. I don't want that to be, a big issue there. But for that very reason, I want to make sure it's right. And I think it could potentially be a very big project too. It may end up being something that's bigger than some of the other videos that I have on the channel. And I don't mean that just to hype it to get more attention for it. I think I've already been getting plenty of questions about it. But I really do think because of how busy of an individual he is and how active he's been in other sports, it could end up just being just a plain long video. And luckily, I'm glad I've made, now that I've made an 8-hour video on 2001 Speed Weeks and the aftermath of it, I don't think people are going to mind that. So that's not an issue really for me. But I think once we get it there, but I do think we're that close. I think we're just a matter of maybe an interview, maybe 2 interviews with him of getting it where it needs to be. And I feel like he thinks that too. So, which is good. Because I'd like to get that done, but that is going to be something that it's not going to be coming out next week. It's not going to be coming out in the short term here. Hopefully we'll have some more updates on that, because I think he's got a fascinating story and I hope he's still interested in doing it. And I think that's going to be another aspect of it. So long story short on that, episode 10, whether it's going to be a Field Fillers episode or not, I do think the Stanton Barrett story is hopefully going to be some part of the videos that are on the channel at some point in the future. I think that'll be a good one to go with there too. I know the way I wrote it already was already pretty long. I think if I did record the script that I had at the time, I think it probably would have been at least an hour and a half. I think it was very dense. I think the issue that he had more was also with like just the race results in isolation. That there was other context that, people like you or I would not be able to ascertain from just watching race clips or reading articles. There's a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, this is our last conversation. He was telling me about a lot of stuff that just that conversation would have probably made a great video. And I wish I recorded it and wish he was cool with it at the time. Unfortunately, I didn't, but I was like, wow, that was really the point that I ended up hitting the pause button on it there. But it is still in the works. And again, I'm very thankful to everybody, including Stanton, for what they have provided so far on it. I even spoke to one of his other team owners in the initial research for that project too. And I'd like to make sure his story is out there too. But I think whenever we get there, it's going to be well worth the wait. But it is going to be something that's going to be taking time. But luckily, it is absolutely not it's not something I'm waiting on either. Because I got plenty of other things I'm working on here in the meantime. One of the other videos that I actually was just editing last night will be the next episode of 500 Days. That may be the next episode that's going to be released on this channel. That will be covering the spring race at Darlington. Again, I've already received materials from Brian Hallman on that. I've already recorded that and have started the editing process. So we're further down the line there. We're not just at a conceptual stage with that. So I think that'll probably, I'd love to have it done sometime this month. I think that's probably on the outside of possibility there. And that would certainly be great. Another project I'm juggling with this is going to be focusing on Mike Harmon. That's going to be a much shorter video. I think I talked about this on last week's show here. But that's going to be, that's another project that I've been working with him on. I think that's probably going to be maybe about a 20-minute video there. So I'd like to get that recorded this week and get that set. And then I have another driver interview that I do have set up this week that I'm hoping to get done at the same time too. So that'll be in our driver standalone video. So basically what I'm kind of trying to shoot for here in the short term here is to get as close as possible to having like 3 projects going at about the same time. So they're at like different phases of being done rather than putting all my eggs into one basket and then just kind of focusing entirely on that. And then when that's done, you got to wait even longer for the next thing to get started. If I got other projects kind of coming together, I think that'll produce things quicker. You probably haven't noticed as much of that change so far on the channel, but I think we're getting there. We're starting to get there. So I think that'll be good. So kind of a long statement on that, but I know I get a lot of questions about that, on that too. I also anticipate to have some more updates very soon on another thing I'm working on, which is of course the Derek Cope book. That is another big thing I would love to get, finished off this year. We made a very big step on that, this weekend here, to kind of get closer to getting a release date set. I was talking with my editor, just yesterday. I think we're getting pretty close to where that needs to be, and hopefully start getting some copies in hand. And I think that would be the best part of it there too. Once we get a release date figured out, we can start, start promoting it. I've got some ideas in terms of promoting the book from there, which will also have an ebook version and an audio book. The audio book will be recorded by me, so it's not going to be like the one from the JD one. I'm still in the process of trying to get the old audiobook for the JD one taken down. It shouldn't be up there anymore. So, and again, if for anybody out there, if you've bought the JD one that's narrated by Dwayne Chu, the one that Waldorf put together on that, I can get you a free code to the one that's recorded by me. So if you have any on that, just send me your proof of purchase or any details on that to make sure, because I only have so many free copies of that I can give out. But if that's the case, I definitely don't want to make sure, I don't want you to pay for that twice, for sure. So, if that's ever a situation, I'm hoping to promote that even more once the Derek Cope book comes out. But there won't be that issue there with the audio book there, which I'm glad. I've already had that recorded. It just needs to be edited and condensed down, and then that'll be going. So it's going to be a very busy stretch here. This is why we haven't done as much trackside coverage this year. But I'm glad that a lot of this is kind of setting up here. That's going to be hopefully interesting. Well, I hope it's going to be interesting for you guys too. But we are getting ready for Phoenix. We've already made finished travel arrangements for championship weekend in November. And we'll hopefully be giving some NASCAR certificates out that weekend as well. But in the meantime, we're kind of focusing on all of this here too. So that'll be kind of the big story. Racing World, I see your comment here. Yeah, just Yaley broke a toe link and they couldn't get it repaired in time. Okay, that makes sense. So that'd be another one too. Does Larry happen to own any of the old 98 cars, Sorokin? That's a good question. I do not know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure because I know he did save some of the cars when he entered them with Rick Ware in 2005, and then beyond that, I'm not sure. But again, there is more to Larry Gunzelman's story that's going to be coming up later in the Field Fillers story. So we'll have more details on that as we come up. So it's basically, this is part 1 of 2, but again, the focus is on 2004 for this part of the series here. We're not through, unbelievably, even this far into the series, we're not through all the Field Fillers from 2004. There's quite a few more we really need to hit here. So that'll be another focus there at the same time. Oh, thank you. No Tires, Just Gas. Glad you like the shirt, too. Jamie Deloach, I'm glad you like the intro to Rise of the Field Fillers, too. Yeah, no, I enjoy doing it. It's a different recording each time. I don't think I've reused one yet. This one I think I actually spliced together two recordings. I had one where I didn't say the field fillers, like the end of that didn't hit the right way, so I did a second take and kind of spliced those together. But I'm glad they came together because it was a fun one to work with too. Let's see here. Alrighty. Oh goodness. Thank you for the super chat there, Beast of Metal. Let me get that read here at the same time too. I checked Wikipedia and Racing Reference after watching the Mach 1 Field Fillers ep. Based on that video, there are 4 pages on the former that need heavy edits and 2 pages that should be merged onto the latter. Oh yeah, there you go. Well, see, that's the really rewarding thing. And thank you for the super chat, Beast of Metal. I noticed the 98 cents there. I like that. That was definitely, again, these stories that you just don't hear about. And this was one I watched that season live, and I noticed this car popping up here and there, this bright white car with the Times New Roman numbers on it. And I just heard nothing about him. And I was wondering, how'd they get Todd Bodine to drive for him? And our Ben Schneider was with me when I was interviewing Todd at Sears Point last year. And I asked him about this team, and he didn't want to talk about it. And he also didn't want to talk about another team that he drove for. And when I talked about Arnold Motorsports, he stopped me pretty quickly and mentions like, no, it was Bob Germain, and it was Germain that was much more the focus, which we do end up seeing in the Arnold Motorsports video, and the presence of the Germain logo comes up pretty early there at the same time. So that'll be a different aspect of that too. But yeah, you raise a good point there. I haven't even looked at like the Wikipedia pages or anything, but I'll leave it to the editors to figure all that stuff out. I know that came up during the JD project too. I know when my book came out, I noticed it was sourced as credited as the link for a couple of significant revisions to that page there as well. So we'll see if that's going to be the situation there too. That's what's really exciting. Again, I compare this to fishing when it comes to these stories. I like to, there's things that I'm kind of interested in. There's things I'm familiar with, but I really want to kind of go out there and get the story and be able to kind of put it together and condense it down and really kind of understand where things fit together and then show it to you guys and say, look, here's this thing I found. It's like, isn't this crazy? Like, it's not, these videos aren't meant to be like a feed of like, oh, I just know all this stuff and I'm sharing it. There's some stuff I can add to it, but a lot of times, I'm learning this stuff as I'm learning this along with you guys. I'm hearing this like, I never knew about the fact of the USS Missouri was the reason that the number 63 was used by Mike Mittler's team. I never knew about, Lucas Oil having a really close connection to Southern California, and that's why they had such a big presence at the California Speedway right from the outset. These are all little details, and luckily each of these drivers, you start to see where it all connects. You start to kind of see things that, and again, things that aren't confined to, just small teams in stock car racing. These are things that had effects on bigger programs, things that have a direct effect on what we see on TV today. Whether it's a sponsor that's still on a car or a team that's still in operation or crew chiefs that are still working, again, that could definitely be an aspect of that too. I think that'll be tied in also this next 500 days episode. We'll bring that up too. So that'll be enjoyable too. I was very pleased listening to the recording of it last night and kind of splicing out the outtakes that it seemed like that hung together pretty well. So I'm very excited to get that one going here too. But yes, again, thank you for the super chat, Beast of Metal. And yeah, I'll have to kind of start looking at the pages for sure to kind of see if there's any other details at the same time. Alrighty. Yeah, they're already sourced ones. Yeah, they probably would. I remember my only close contact with Wikipedia. There was one time where somebody took it on themselves to do a feature on the last place finisher of different races, and then there was like a thing about last place not being notable enough, so they took down his edits and stuff on that. That wasn't me. Somebody else did that, but that was brought up to me like I think in 2010, it was years ago. That was back when I was like just starting the Last Car site. But I know that came up at one point there too. Peterson's the last car IndyCar champion. Well, that'll be something too. That'll be more for our William Saki there for an article later this week here. I thought about going to that race actually this weekend. I do like Laguna Seca. I toured there when I was looking to do some work with SCCA a number of years ago. Beautiful facility. And I know now that it's repaved, I'm sure it's even better. That was maybe another time there for sure. We're kind of looking more towards maybe just kind of going to the West Series race at Roseville here later this month. I think that'll be fun. So if anybody's coming out to that's one I'm kind of looking to check out there at the same time. And then, of course, getting ready for Phoenix in November. But yeah. Do you think he'll ever do a field fillers about Bill Lester in the Truck Series? I mean, that's a possibility. I wouldn't rule anything out. I mean, really. I mean, I think that, it's definitely more of a team focus than a driver focus. Obviously, in some cases, like this Mach 1 one, for example, the team owner and the driver, the roles are very closely together. Morgan Shepherd's, of course, comes up. Kirk Shelmerdine. Not an uncommon thing to have both brought up there. But we'll see. And again, it doesn't even have to be a field fillers episode. It could just be a standalone profile. You'll notice a lot of my videos kind of have a similar structure to them in terms of how I kind of approach discussing topics, whether it's the Chuck Bound video that was kind of mentioned here a little bit earlier, or a field fillers thing, or 500 days. Those are kind of the three main avenues that I kind of do a lot of the videos on the channel here too. So we'll see if something else comes up here at the same time. Seeing a question about 2009 field fillers. All I'll say on that is stay tuned. Stay tuned. But it's going to be, it'll be interesting. We got a lot of content here coming up, and I got a lot of standalone videos that I'd like to get to too, but I'm trying not to get too much into one or the other. I'm trying to kind of keep all these series going, so you're not waiting forever for the next field fillers or the next 500 days episode. So we got that too. So with that, kind of a long detour here on the show. Hopefully I haven't bored too many people on this. I think this is probably why it's probably another good reason to not mention the race winner on the screen here. So, because it's going to kind of be more of a discussion of not just stuff from the race weekend, but also anything else of the channel here that the Patreon's already aware of. Things of that nature. So we'll see how that goes. We'll talk about the Truck Series race, and I want to kind of do a feature on that at the exact same time here. And we'll do some trivia here, and I do still have show and tell for you guys here in a little bit. I just need to get something to drink here in the meantime. So just a moment. Alrighty. So, let me ask you this. Did you guys see the Truck Series race back on was it Friday night? Yeah, Friday night. So, not only did it have a really bizarre last place battle there that was settled very early on. I guess we'll go ahead and talk about that first of all. It also had a dramatic finish. And I want to kind of talk about that here for sure. But let me talk about the last place battle to begin with. Spencer Davis. This is a driver that I've talked about a little bit on the Last Car page. He drove for his family's team as a part-time effort, ran the number 11, had the first last place finish for the number 11 since Mike Hurlburt back in the 1990s. Not a number you usually see finish in last place in the Truck Series. You think about Red Horse Racing, you think about other programs that have run that number over the years, but a bit of an unusual deal here. But good to see him back out in the Truck Series. We haven't seen him in a couple of years. I think 2021 in Martinsville was his last start in the series. He comes out for the Roper team that we also haven't seen since IRP. And unfortunately, they finished in last place, which the team last did with Johnny Sauter at North Wilkesboro. The circumstances of this were a bit unusual, a little bit of a throwback. Spencer Davis's team was one of many that we saw in both the Xfinity and the Cup Series and the Truck Series have trouble in practice and qualifying. Him bouncing off the outside wall. They did not have a backup truck, so they had to do the very best they could. Very similar to what we heard from Larry Gunselman. Probably took a page from that video, just banged out the dents on the side of that truck and just hoped for the best, that they could get a good run in there or at least start the race. But had to go out there and present the truck as is. Had the thing all taped up and just sent him back out there. Unfortunately, only completed one lap. pulled the truck behind the wall. The team told the driver that they were opening the gate up to let him back behind there. That was it. So a very short night. I guess you could say that it's a start and park. I don't know if they had a legitimate suspension issue. We never heard from NASCAR during the race that they were having suspension problems with the truck. Certainly, I'm sure bouncing off the outside wall and not being able to complete repairs on the exact same day to run this race didn't do that any favors at the same time. But regardless, last place finisher there. Big thanks to everybody that was sharing pictures of the 04 team for how quickly that happened there. It really shows that, when you watch a race in general, you don't want to miss the start of it there because something unusual like that could happen. And we certainly saw that definitely in today's race, in the Cup race, as well as the Truck Series race back on Friday. So that was the case there. So unfortunate deal for Spencer Davis. Hopefully we see him make some more starts. I like it when these drivers still try to work their way back into the series. He was actually running a number of races. I was surprised how many starts he made already in the number 11 team, the Inox Supreme Lubricants Toyota there, after he had driven for Kyle Busch before and then driving some extra Toyotas there after that, which is kind of interesting that he was driving a Ford this time around. I guess the technical alliance didn't run too deep on there, preventing him from running that, but still getting a start out there. Mason Maggio finishing next to last after a crash. Jennifer Jo Cobb, that we also saw return to the track, bringing a truck out at Kansas, her home race, finishing the race in 34th place. Matt Crafton, after slapping the wall, ends up in 33rd. And Greg Van Alst finished the race under power. Glad that Greg Van Alst was able to get there. Actually nominated him for the Pocono Spirit Award there in the over at the NMPA. And hopefully he got some votes. I'm not sure. But I thought for the endurance that he's faced and trying to get some good runs out there, ends up finishing in the 32nd spot there at the end of the day. But again, glad to see him still finish a race under power. I think, at least make some small steps after what's, I think, been just an exhausting year for him this season that began so good with the ARCA win at Daytona this year. Spencer Davis at Old Athenian Motorsports Trucks. I'm not aware of that. That's interesting. But yeah, I think that kind of takes, that explains where some of that came from. I don't know if he was, well, I guess Roper's team didn't have him, but Spencer Davis's team, I guess, had that. Very interesting. See, I always love, that was always one of the best parts, like whenever you're, at the track or if you get in the garage area and you can see the cross member, see if there's an old team logo or anything like that, that would be pretty cool. But yeah, that was the case. So, I want to kind of get back to the elephant in the room here. And that would be the finish of the Truck Series race, won by Christian Eckes. Congratulations to Eckes for pulling off a thrilling victory there over Taylor Gray, Matt DiBenedetto in third, Corey Hyman fourth, Zane Smith in fifth, followed by Hocevar, Friesen, Nick Sanchez, Jesse Love with another great run in the, I almost said ThorSport, but nope, that would be the Tricon Garage effort there, the number one. And Tyler Ankrum rounding out your top 10 there as well. Jake Drew, right outside the top 10 for Hattori Racing Enterprises, has finished every one of his truck starts on the lead lap. I believe he's never finished worse than 17th. I know the Hattori effort has, the good Toyota backing, and it's a good organization because we've seen Ankrum run really well as well. But still, I think given his limited experience in the Truck Series, he's off to a fantastic start. And I can't wait to see how he does going forward here as well. But yeah, so we will see. So I want to talk about the Truck Series finish and the play-by-play that led up to it. And I'm going to see if I can get this worked. Jesse got penalized for a restart violation. Oh, that's too bad. Was it after the fact? I know the lineup changed. He was 10th, right? And then it got. Was it a? Was that what bumped him out of the top 10, or did something else happen after? Because I don't see it on the results here. I got to look that up, but that's at least what we got on the results here. I know it didn't change anything in last place because I heard the technical inspection went through, so we had that cleared up. But anyway, let me get into the Cup Series finish. Now, I played around with the second screen here a while back, and we were playing some sound on this, and I want to see if the sound still works. So I believe it should. I tested this before the show, so I want to kind of. I talk too much about the broadcast in isolation. and about play-by-play and ways that it could be better. And I think the problem is that, you know, aside from the videos that I've done on the topic, I've already done, 3 of these. You know, usually when I'm on here, I'm just ranting about it and I'm saying like, oh, well, this would probably be better. This would probably be better. What we don't do really enough on the show here, I think, is actually play the clip, listen to it, pick it apart a little bit, and suggest how it could be better. So I'd like to experiment with that on the show here tonight, if you'd like. I'm kind of doing this later in the show. We got a bit fewer people in the chat. Those of you sticking around for show and tell and trivia, please do still stick around. We're going to still do that. But this is something I kind of want to get into because this was a pretty flagrant example of a fantastic finish. Probably the best race of the weekend, really. I think the Xfinity race had a lot going on. The Cup Series race had a crazy finish too. But I would say the Truck Series race was probably the best of the weekend here. And yet it played out this way. So without further ado, let me play the audio from this on here. Hopefully the sound is working okay on here. But we'll just play this one time through and we'll go from there.
Corey Heim on the inside, Zane Smith.
This is going to be tough.
Watch him fan out.
They're pushing from the second row. Look at Eckes. Look at Taylor Gray.
Taylor Gray in that orange and black. Number 17 up high, side by side. Corey Heim to the point. Christian Eckes on the top of the track. The 38 is Zane Smith in the middle.
3 wide for the lead. Look at
3
this.
wide, there's contact. Corey Heim. White flag is out. How is this one going to end? Christian Eckes by a nose. 3 wide, guys. They're hanging on to it for this final lap.
Watch Zane side draft Corey Heim. Where will Christian go? Will he down to the bottom? Yes.
Is Christian Eckes going to steal this? Christian, Zane Smith sideways, taps the wall. He hangs on to it. They're 3 wide behind him. Christian Eckes steals the win here at Kansas.
Oh, me, what a finish.
Painful. Oh my God. This was a fantastic finish out there. And my goodness, I don't know. I've heard a lot about, now here's what usually happens when I talk about this. So, it's okay. It's audio and video. That's okay. This is worth it. This is worth having the discussion on this. So I'm not worried about that piece of metal, but I appreciate the concern. So, this is worth it for the object lesson on this. So, okay. Gosh, where to even start? So, what I usually hear when I talk about these Truck Series broadcasts and the way they do the play-by-play is that, okay, well, wait a minute, they're doing it remotely. How can they be expected to react to it the same way when they're at the track? I disagree with that. I think that you or I or anybody here sitting here watching this, or probably when we watch this live, probably anything we said at that moment would probably have conveyed the moment really well back then. So I think that would have been perfectly good. I don't think that has anything to do with the quality of the play-by-play at the same time. And then I hear the other side of it where it's like, well, what do you expect? It's like, look, it's the Truck Series, it's a lower division. Why does it need to have really good play-by-play? And I don't understand that argument either, because it's like, well, wait a minute. Think about that Larry Gunselman video that I had a while back, that it had actual play-by-play describing a West Series race on a small short track somewhere. And that commentary, when Larry Gunselman is like fighting his way around traffic and trying to get a good finish out of it, that was fantastic. So you can have a race between just 2 cars out there and have really good play-by-play. That's the issue. So when those excuses don't work, what you are left with is play-by-play that's just not very good. And I there's a part of me that really hates pointing this out, because At the same time, Jamie Little is an excellent pit reporter. Great garage reporter too. I've seen her in the garage hustling up stories just as hard as anybody else. Phil Parsons, same thing. Has been broadcasting Truck Series races, forever. There's clips I was pulling up last night on 500 Days where he's working with Dr. Jerry Punch and doing a great job with it too. And of course, following his son Stefan's career as well has been a big part of that. And then you have Michael Waltrip, who admittedly I've not been the biggest fan of in the play-by-play booth, but even he's had some moments there along the way. The parts are there, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't quite work out, and that's kind of the issue there. So I think probably what I want to do here at the first point here is let's cue this back, and we'll just kind of point out what's an issue here bit by bit. So we'll do a little bit of start and stop, a little bit of red light, green light here. Okay. So before we get started with this here, it's a playoff race. You have storylines throughout the field. So you got drivers that are trying to, punch their ticket. You got drivers that are trying to just get good finishes at the end of the day. You got kind of a good mix of it here. Late race restart. Now, this is not just any moment in the middle of the race. If it's just, if something happens, and maybe it's not 100%, maybe you're cruising at like 80%, big deal. Nobody's going to really have any kind of problems with it. But at the end, step up, like just a little bit. It's like, this could be like an epic moment, and anything could happen. And, the other ththing is you got to think about like, if they're going to be like producing this for like some highlight reel further down the line or something like that. The really good broadcasters, they can kind of they'll have something that'll like come up to mind and they'll actually say it in the moment. And I know that's so easy to say from literally sitting here as like an armchair quarterback here talking about it. But the alternative, when you don't do that, it comes out like this. And the problem is you don't get another chance at that. You could try to kind of piece it together afterwards, but it's in the moment that it's going to have to work. So, okay. So we got a late race restart here. You got Corey Heim and Zane Smith on the front row. Okay, let's have at it again.
Corey Heim on the inside, Zane Smith.
Okay, that's fine. You could do that. I think I usually get on Rick Allen about this, where he's like, so-and-so on the inside, so-and-so on the outside. Like, okay, all right, fine. Like, you got a double file restart. That's not a big deal. It's a little too copy-paste. But I usually am just kind of like, okay, you can't think of anything else to say here. It's like, can Corey Heim hold off Zane Smith? Corey Heim's won X number of races this year. He's never won at Kansas. Can he do it tonight? But he's got Zane Smith, the defending champion, alongside him. Something like that. Build things up. This could be the last restart of the race. Okay, so there's that. Moving on.
This is going to be tough.
Yeah, Mikey, this is going to be tough. Useless. I think not saying anything would probably have been better than that.
Watch him fan out.
They're pushing from the second row.
Okay, now that's not bad. Fanning out, one thing, because they do fan out on these restarts, and they are, so okay, you're kind of doing that. And especially Phil Parsons really takes the lead here. So he's really good with, pushing the next row. That's something you're noticing. You're noticing the first four trucks pull away. Good. Okay, that's fine. So far, okay, a little bit too much, but, we're doing okay. We're doing okay so far. We're doing okay. It could have been a little bit better before the line, but we're getting there.
Look at Eckes. Look at Taylor Gray.
Okay, now this was pointed out by somebody else. Look at Eckes. Look at Taylor Gray. Look at what, Mikey? Look at what? Look. Okay, I'm looking. What is he doing? Like, instead of saying, look at this, look at that, we're watching the screen. I never understood, unless you're doing like a replay, like saying, look at what happened. Like, you could do that. But other than that, you shouldn't just be saying like, oh, look at this driver, look at that driver. It's like, no. Just tell me what's happening. There's too much happening here. You got all these trucks bunching up here. See if somebody's making a move, and I know that, he's not in the head play-by-play position, but this is where it gets, it's just pointless. You know, it's like, and first of all, and also, here we go back to the camera angle issue that I usually have. This camera is way too far to discern who's where. I know I got it on the smaller version of the screen here, so you can't see it as well as if it was full up. But even if you did, I mean, we'll make it bigger here. Yeah, I mean, same thing. You know, I mean, it's like, okay, I mean, how about say, you know, who's setting up who? It's like, oh, look at the battle for third between, Christian Eckes here to the outside of Carson Hocevar. Look at the sparks coming off Hocevar's truck as he runs the apron, trying to get third from Eckes, but the battle remains up front with Corey Heim and Zane Smith. See, it writes itself. You know, just something like that. That would be great. I might actually, maybe I'll just keep it big like this. Would that help? Hopefully that makes this better. I just don't want to lose too much of what else is on the screen because it's behind the thing on the right, but that might not be a problem for this. Well, if anybody needs it smaller again, we can do that too. So, okay. So now we're barely into turn one here, and we got notes already.
Taylor Gray in that orange and black, number 17 up high, side by.
Okay, fine. I like that. I like when they're describing the way the trucks look, and I prefer it better if you mention the sponsors. I know some people get their back up about that. It's like, oh, it's not our job to advertise the sponsors. It's like, well, I'm sorry, folks. The cameraman is already doing that too. It's showing the brands on the car. If the brands on the trucks were an issue, you know, they would just be blurred out or something. We seem to have technology that can do that. But, you know, it's like, look, just say the sponsor. Like, that would be kind of nice. I know they change every week. That would be hard to do. But, you know, you got HD monitors that are showing everything. And doubly important, if you're doing this remotely, then you should be able to see it about as clearly as I'm sitting here watching it on screen. But to be fair to Jamie Little, I like describing the colors. That's nice. Bring in the way that the trucks look. Bring in that aspect of it. Make it kind of come alive. I know that radio does that because they have to, because they don't have the visual element. But it's nice to kind of point out because now you're looking for, you know, the orange and black truck. The problem is it's not synced up with the camera footage because now you can't see the truck at all in this shot. It did change while she was saying it, so I'm not going to be too critical of that. But again, I think that's something positive. Do a little bit more of that.
By side, Corey Heim to the point. Christian Eckes.
Okay, so now we've had a couple of things happen here. So first of all, we have Matt DiBenedetto down here, who is trying to make the next round of the playoffs. He's got a big run here. He gets past the 17 and the 42. He's making a move towards the top three. You also have a battle for the lead that's forming up. You got a 3-wide deal here. You got Eckes that's moved to the outside lane. You got Heim that's moving ahead. You do have a lot that's happening at the same time. You also have 3 people in the booth. So one of them should be saying something. I mean, you could at least have somebody say, look at this move. I mean, well, maybe not do a look at this. Hey, okay, to be fair, not to fall into that. It's like, just have a moment where you say, Matt DiBenedetto is making this big move on the inside of Hocevar, and he's going to try to get the 4th spot there, but the battle's up front. Corey Heim has a big run on the inside of Zane Smith, but to the outside, there's, I almost said Derek Kraus again. There you got Christian Eckes, and it's a 3-wide battle for the lead. But it's just like, it's more the look at this stuff again.
Corey Heim to the point. Christian Eckes on the top of the track. The 38 is Zane Smith in the middle.
3 wide for the lead.
Okay. All right. Now, the one thing that modern broadcasting seems to notice more than anything else is when the cars, or the trucks in this case, go 3 wide. I'll give them credit for that. They'll always have to be, I mean, if it's 3 wide, that's what they're waiting for. They're waiting for 2 things. They're waiting for the cars to go 3 wide, and they're waiting for a restart. And they're on that. They're all over that. It's just everything else needs to be like that. So yeah, and it's unfortunate that you have this bit of a repeat where they're all kind of saying the same thing. It's like 3 wide for the lead. It's like, okay, good. I'm glad I'm glad all 3 of you noticed it, but try to shake it up a little bit. I always wonder if in the booth they could hear each other. because sometimes it feels like they're on like 3 separate feeds, because sometimes they repeat each other about the exact same thing. And I joke about that in the terrible broadcast videos, but this is a perfect example of it here. It's like, okay, I know you're excited. I know there's a lot that's happening. We're coming down to, the last lap of this here. Just a little different there. Just try to shake it up. If somebody else says something, try to say something different.
Look at this.
Wide, there's
Look at this. I'm looking at this. See, again, that's if you're gonna say look at this, try to minimize it at the very least. It's like just nobody's describing what's happening here. You got trucks out of control. You got Heim making this move down to the apron. You got 2 trucks to the high lane. Who's got the momentum? Who's going to try to get, who's going to lead at the stripe? Something with that.
contact, Corey Heim. White
Okay, Corey Heim. Corey Heim what?
flag is out. How is
Okay, good. White flag is out. I like that. Yeah. And there's still 3, there's still 3 wide with they crossed the stripe 3 wide at the white flag, 1 lap to go. Like that. Something like that. Like, okay, you got the pieces of it. She's very close to it here, but it's not quite there.
this one going to end? Christian Eckes.
How's this one going to end? Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. That's okay. See, again, it's there's pieces that are working pretty well, but there's these pauses, and I just feel like I'm off camera doing this, like just more. Like you could afford, if you're having to finish this crazy, you could afford to be over the top. Like I don't know where we came, in broadcasting or just in things in general. Where here, I'll shrink this so you can see. Yeah, see again, we're still 3 wide in the corner here. Where we become so self-conscious, like, oh, I can't be over the top. That's too much. It's like, no. The famous calls, the ones people remember. I mean, Ken Squire would come up with some kind of nickname for what's happening here. It's like, 3, or Mike Joy talking about, 3 cars under a blanket, the inches apart and, tailgate to tailgate, something like that. That would be really cool.
Knows. 3 wide, guys. They're hanging on to it for this final lap.
Watch Zane.
Okay, it's okay. I mean, that's an example of more like the action outpacing the commentary. It's like 3 wide, they're hanging on to it. Okay, that's good. But now it's changed. Now it's back to 2 wide, and you got Christian Eckes falling back in 3rd place. It's like, 3 wide, now back to 2 wide again. It's just on the beat there. Now, if this is a consequence of broadcasting it remotely, then there would be an issue. If there's a 7-second delay, or something, and what we're seeing isn't synced up with them, then that needs to be looked at too, because that's almost what this feels like. But again, the pauses are so long that even if you rewound this a little bit, I don't think it would line up right either. So that's where I'm not 100% on that.
Side draft, Corey Heim. Where will Christian go? Will he dive to the bottom? Yes.
Okay, good job, Michael. That was good. Yes. Okay, now this is the signal here. Jamie should jump right on this immediately. It's like Christian Eckes to the bottom, goes for the lead. Look at him swing 3 lanes to the bottom on both Heim and Smith. He's gonna get the lead into 3 on the final lap. Like that. This is, use what Mikey just said. That was good. I'll give credit due where it's deserved. That was good. So right there, just hit that right away. So what happens? Nothing happens. Bad. Meanwhile, stuff is happening. You got Eckes is making the move. He's past Heim already.
Is Christian Eckes going to steal this?
See, now you skipped a beat here. So now, first of all, is Christian Eckes going to steal this? Ordinarily, not a bad line, but the tone is wrong. The tone is flat. That's the tone of maybe coming to the green flag. That's it's like, wow, Christian Eckes, is he going to steal this one? He's maybe at the front row on old tires. That's not passing 3 wide for the lead in the last lap in the last corner. Your voice should be going up at that point. No. And the problem is, it also gives the impression there's more race left than there is because the tone isn't that active. So you have a situation there where, if she jumped off what Michael said there, she would probably have a really good call. She could just carry it the rest of the way through turns 3 and 4 back to the line, and it would have been great. I mean, pretty much anything you could say from there. It's like, you could just follow Eckes through the rest of this and just be like, oh, Christian Eckes gets a 3-wide pass. He's going to, he blows the doors off of Corey Heim and Zane Smith. Smith to the second spot. Christian Eckes to the lead off turn 4. Just really bring it up. Don't be so reserved about this.
Christian, Zane Smith sideways.
Okay, good. Now, they notice Zane Smith break loose, which is good, because, it's getting even crazier. And I like that they're doing the It almost seems like Phil Parsons and Michael Waltrip are waiting for Jamie Little to say something else, and she's just not doing it. And it's like, and I like that she brings up that Zane Smith is sideways, but that could have been part of, you should be at full throttle at this point. You should be like just calling everything and just describing, hyping up Christian Eckes and the move that he made, and he's leading off the corner, and oh my goodness, this is crazy, and he's going to pull off the win for the McNally team, and Zane Smith saved the truck for second spot. Is he going to be able to hang on? Can he get Eckes to the line? You're just active, just like that.
The wall, he hangs on to it. They're 3 wide.
They're 3 wide behind him. Okay, no, it's. See, the moment's already passed. See, it didn't start back over in, going into turn 3. Now you're describing other stuff that's happening behind. The leader is pulled away. He's within sight of the stripe. If you're going to say the 3 wide behind, you better say that pretty quick. It's like the battle is 3 wide for second, but Christian Eckes pulls away and takes the victory. Just lean into it. Just lean into it.
Behind him, Christian Eckes steals the win here at Kansas.
Okay, now, see again, she says it the second time. Christian Eckes steals a win. That's good if she hadn't already said it earlier in turns 3 and 4. It was just a little bit off there. Like, if you have that in the back of your mind, save that to when they get to the stripe to make sure he gets there. Because, anything can happen. What if he blows a tire, blows an engine, gets wrecked? You may not be able to use that. But, that's, it's just the momentum is just not there. It's like you just want to I'm doing this the whole time. It's like, just more. And so there's the issue there. So to break this down, again, you have the look at this stuff that needs to stop. Like, just, okay, tell me what I'm looking at. Tell me what I'm looking at. Tell me why I'm looking at it. Tell me what action is happening. The screen is not going to carry this for you. And I refuse to let TV play-by-play become just some vestigial thing where it's not going to, where it's just irrelevant. It's like, it's not like, oh, you can see what's happening. I don't need to say anything, or I don't need to say much. That's the problem. That's the problem I have with that too. So that's the part that really bugs me. So what I'm going to try to do, and I don't know how, again, I'm willing to put myself on the chopping block here with this. So I'm going to cue this thing back to the beginning. And we'll go back to, where was it? It was like 620 on this. So, okay. So let's cue back to the restart here. We're going to mute the play-by-play, and we'll try to come up with something better. And, look, and now I'm one person here instead of a 3-person group. And I'm not going to use that as an excuse. So again, just try to think of something better for the finish of this. Okay. So, coming down to 2 laps to go at Kansas, and the front row takes off. Corey Heim gets a little bit of an advantage over Zane Smith. They're getting pushed by the second row. Heim gets a little bit of an advantage. Zane Smith trying to work the outside line. They are still side by side off turn 2. The run continues. Christian Eckes looking racy, looking high. Here he comes to the outside. Matt DiBenedetto also making a move. He's 3 wide there with Hocevar, but it's 3 wide for the lead off turn 4. And Heim gets sideways. Zane Smith, Christian Eckes to the outside. Eckes tries to get an advantage. They're bang off each other, side by side, tailgate to tailgate. Heim still has the lead. Zane Smith to the middle. They slide up in front of Eckes. 2 wide there. Nowhere to go, but is there to the inside. Eckes comes by. Eckes goes for the lead. Zane Smith to second. Now Heim falls back to third. Zane Smith dead sideways off the corner. Coming down to the stripe, they're 3 wide for second, but it's all Christian Eckes takes the win here at Kansas. There. And I swear, I didn't practice this. I didn't have a script here. I'm just one person. Now, ordinarily, if I were in the booth with 2 other people, I wouldn't just talk over them completely there. But I would expect 3 people, 3 professionals, to jump in there. Now, I would probably say less than that, so I don't have like, I'm not just complete, because that would probably be closer to a radio thing. If I had taken over the radio broadcast for like the last couple laps, I'd probably try to do that, but you're kind of bouncing it back and forth, and I'm sure there's a certain protocol with that. But, and there's a couple parts I would have done better, for sure. But that's what I would have done too. If I have a bad broadcast or something where it's just, I hear that and it doesn't sound right, then I'm going to want to go back and I want to do it better the next time. And I just never sense that this is improving. It seems like it's just kind of at the same level and it's flat. And it's unfortunate because we're having some great racing out here. We had a fantastic finish to this race and there it is. So again, this is where I'm coming from on this. And look, I'll put myself on the chopping block there. I'm not going to profess to be the best at doing this. There's all kinds of people who would be sitting in this chair and with this hooked up and playing that clip that could probably give you a fantastic call to the finish of that. But that's not who's in the booth right now. And does it matter that I'm not at the track? Look, yes, I already know what the outcome of the race is, and if we did just analyze the finish of it. But I'm sitting here at home with that known and just trying to just jump into it. And I'm not pretending that the job is easy. But again, I think that when it comes to professionals and when you are a broadcasting professional, you should be demanding more. You should be demanding more. There's too much stuff out there in things within and without sports where we are settling for not enough. And I won't go too far down that road because everybody in here could probably think of 1 or 2 things in any context that they feel that way about. And you shouldn't feel bad about expecting more from professionals. Life is too short for mediocrity. It really is. It really is. Be exceptional. Demand exceptionalism. And if people aren't up to it, find someone else. But if you can derive that out of people that you have already, then do that. Again, I don't know whether this is a talent issue or a direction issue or anything like that, but I think that that's where it needs to be looked at too. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But that's where we are right now. So and it's sad because what ultimately happens here is when you don't have the play-by-play and the play-by-play doesn't work out, then imagine anybody that's putting a montage together of great moments from the race and the commentary is bad and you can't separate it out because it's layered on top of the engine noise. You hear so many of these ones where they use the radio play-by-play that they play before, like the NBC races. It's not the same thing as, Gordon got loose, it's Harvick, or, things of that nature. We're having fantastic racing out here, but if the play-by-play is not good in the YouTube era, in the social media era, where everything is like video clips and just watching that, like that would be something else. So that's the thing. So yeah, again, and you got to be critical of your work. Like, again, I'm sure watching this video back, if I watch that right now, there'd be like a couple things like, okay, I probably shouldn't have done that. I probably do this different. That needs to happen. You can't let I don't know if this is an ego thing, but you can't let that get in the way because, I mean, again, I talk about this even on the show here. Like, if there's something that's wrong, if there's something that's distracting, if there's something that's unsatisfactory, I want to know about it because I want to make it better. And, again, I don't think it's unreasonable to demand that. So I was chewing that in my mind. I was thinking, I should break this down, and we may do this for more of them. And yeah, we probably get these videos demonetized in the process there. That may happen, but if that's the case, it's worth it as a demonstrative example here, because if I made a standalone video and made the extra time of producing it, that might get demonetized too. So who cares? So that'll be that too. But I appreciate the concern there, Beast of Metal. So I hope that was instructive. I don't know if that'll be a regular feature or not. We probably will. I'm really enjoying the second screen, and I'd like to be able to use it more for features on this show. But that'll be another part of it there. So we talked basically about that. So again, Eckes, tremendous victory. The way that played out was crazy. One of the best Truck Series finishes I've seen certainly this year. Yeah, I mean, again, there's so much that happens. There's so much that happens on a racetrack that just doesn't get covered. And when it goes well, I will be absolutely, I will absolutely jump on and say, yeah, this was really good. Like, for example, one thing I really think that NBC is taking notes with their broadcast. I love when Dale Jr. and Jeff Burton are out on the track and you get a sense of scale where, like, they're talking at like a part where, whether it's the restart zone at Indianapolis, whether it's next to the wall off turn 4 at Darlington, you get a sense of how big the track is. You get a sense, it's not just a thing you're watching as traffic goes by. It's like, this is a stadium. This is a palace. This is and it's unique. From the one you saw this week is way different from the one you saw last week. And it's way different from the one you're going to see next week. And especially when you're you're hyping up the drivers while the engines are fired. They started doing that these last few weeks. That is great. That's great. I want more of that. That's the kind of stuff that's going. And that's going to pull people into the sport. I mean, the sport itself is its best product. It doesn't need, that's why I just kind of recoil at some of these efforts where they try to, it's like, oh, you need to make the sport this, we need to make the sport that, we need to bring this in, it's like, no. What you need to do is you need to let the sport be the sport. It's sight, it's sound, it's smell, it's color, it's history, it's, it's everything. I mean, just be true to that. Let people experience that, and it'll work. And I mean, we're seeing better. I like to think that them starting to do this has helped and has brought more fans in, because it should. The sport needs that to keep going. But you can't rest on your laurels. You can't just, just because the sport doesn't sell itself in the sense that you can do the bare minimum and it's going to be great. You gotta get in there. Just get in there. Like, I don't get that. I mean, I know it's hard, but there should be somebody at Fox should be doing what I just did tonight. Somebody should be, and I'm not confident that that's happening. And that's the problem. That's the problem I have. I think it should be just like this. Like, look, bring everybody in the room. Let's watch this together. And it's like, okay, what'd you like about this? What'd you not like about this? It's like, look, right here, do this. Right here, try that. Just try it, And again, and you'll be surprised. I mean, it's got to be the right direction. So we'll see. But yeah, that'll be the other part there too. So at any rate, let me jump back into this. So, I saw we had some note on inspection. Is inspection clear? I guess it is. Oh, there you go, Pocris. Pull that up there. I guess we're set. Are we? Yes, 8 minutes ago. Thank you so much, everyone in the chat that was mentioning this too. Bob Pocris in the chat. Tech is clear, no issues. Reddick is the winner. No cars to R&D. So yes, technical inspection is clear. Inspection is complete. So again, Tyler Reddick is your race winner, which means Martin Truex Jr. does have his 10th career Cup Series last place finish. His second at Kansas, first since his first last place finish at Kansas in 2008, the third straight last place finish he's had in mid-September, dating back to 2018. That's another interesting stat on that too. So yeah, there's that on that too. So that'll be the story. So the Truex article will be up a little bit later tonight. We'll get that set up for you guys here. And oh yes, I still owe you. We're still doing trivia and show and tell. So the show's not over yet, but we're getting down to it. So those of you who stuck around, goodness, we're still at 50 people. Thank you so much for sticking around. We'll definitely do that. And any other questions you guys have from that at the same time. Oh, Kevin, yeah. Do I make anything on the YouTube channel? I do. Not much, but usually these streams, I mean, I really do appreciate those of you who do like the super chats. That's cool. It's not expected, but it's always appreciated there. But yeah, I mean, usually these streams, once they go, after they go live, they usually don't get that many hits. So if this one gets flagged, I'm not worried about it. It's worth it for the demonstrative purpose of breaking down these broadcasts here. So we'll see how that goes. That may or may not be an issue, but we'll see how that plays out. But I think that's another way to certainly look at that. Oh, me, Slapshoes, and David Land. That would actually be a hoot. I think we would play games at that point. That'd be great. So yeah, who knows? No, I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was just yeah, something I was thinking of. I was thinking about that since Friday, but I was like, do I want to do that? Yeah, I kind of do. But if we have any other flagrant examples of that in broadcast, we'll probably just keep banging the drum and we'll just see what happens. If a couple of videos get flagged, it'll be worth it for that. Oh dear. Let's see here. So let's do this. Let's bring out, I do have show and tell for you guys. Let's do the trivia section here and we'll jump into that. So again, we'll bring out the late 90s deal here with the late 90s Elliott Marino shirt here for the show tonight. Again, big thanks to Brent Wentz at the Days Gone By shop. Every once in a while I have to splurge and pick up one of these, and this one was definitely I couldn't let it go. I had to go for it. But I'm glad to wear the show here for start of football season. Figured that was a good tie-in there too. Alrighty, so again, the categories are drivers. Let's see, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Go ahead and mention which category you'd like me to do some questions from, and we'll do that tonight. NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Alrighty. NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So those are the case there. Alrighty. So, a little something that I found the other day that I want to kind of have for our show and tell portion here. So thank you so much for tuning in, and definitely let me know which categories. Okay, good. We got categories starting to come in. So I want to talk about another passionate subject of mine, which is NASCAR merchandising, things that both work and do not work, and things that we once did have and no longer have. I found these over at a shop near where I work. After work, I swung by this place, and I found these bad boys here. Check this out. The 1/144th scale. How many people are really into that scale here? I know we mentioned on the last show here, there was somebody who was sending pictures of a Gary Bradbury hauler, a 64 scale hauler. I've always been more of a fan of these really small ones because I think the haulers tend to take up entirely too much space. It's kind of about the same reason I've never really been that big into 24th scale. These are really good. Now, there's been a couple versions I think we've talked about on the show here of the versions that have like the Micro Machine style cars, kind of the narrower wheelbase. But these actually have the cars actually look closer to like a 64th scale that's just reduced. And I've always been a big fan of these. And this one, this person had a few of these here, and I wanted to kind of check these out. So yeah, again, this is Gary Bradbury from 1997. The Child Support Recovery International paint scheme, the TriStar Motorsports injury. This is one of the topics that he didn't really want to go into in the interview there, but talked about some of the other teams that he raced for there. We also have, let's see, we got Rodney Combs. We got a Busch Series 1 here. So again, even like, a 43 car, the Lance Snacks paint scheme on this one. Again, really nice detail for even for something this small. And I love like the old stickers that they kind of put on these back then. And what's great is they don't take a tremendous amount of space, but you still get the experience of that. So if you set up like a whole line of these, like they'll look pretty cool. And this other one I picked up here, here's another one. This is really nice. This is a Johnny Benson 97. It's even got like the foil Penske Racing kind of sticker here. It's really hard to see in the shot. I can kind of bring it a little closer, but right next to my middle finger, there's a decal or a logo that says there that it's the official motor oil, the Brickyard 400. Johnny Benson, of course, having one of his best runs back in his early couple of seasons in the 1996 running there. So again, the Bahari team, I've always liked their style. Again, the bright yellow car. I mean, these days you got the Menards paint schemes. Those always stand out. But the Pennzoil cars, I mean, those are always just gorgeous looking pieces of equipment. I was just looking, it's got another small decal here. Can't quite read on that, but it's got the Bahari logo, the Pontiac Motorsports deal there. But yeah, these were sick. I always thought these were really cool. This is about the scale I like, because I usually just, again, like the 64th scale ones and Micro Machines. I saw people suggesting that too. Yeah, I mean, Micro Machines were just the best. We'll probably have to do a video on that at some point too. Obviously, they had their crossover with NASCAR in the early 90s. Richard Petty ones. You usually see a lot of those on eBay. But these are great. But the person was selling them for like a couple bucks each. And I picked up those. And I just thought that, yeah, these were just real hip. I mean, again, it's nice when you have the 64 scale ones. But again, those are always just so big. But these were just, these came out really nice. And actually, to go in with the shirt, I did have, and I found this in my resources there, I do have the Nadu version here too. And that one's been on my shelf here for a bit. And again, nice detail, even to the point with the logo on the roof there, kind of the spotter stand on the top. And then, of course, the little car on there too. See, again, just real, I mean, the actual little body style. There you go. Kind of get it into focus, kind of like on the 64 scale. But then, yeah, there you go. Still a sucker for it. I mean, again, I'm not at all a Dolphins fan, but definitely a fan of this car, and definitely the memories that go with it for sure. But yeah, that's part of the Nadu collection here over at LASCAR headquarters. But yeah, and actually small enough that it can actually just kind of roll up the ramp there and into the back of the deal there. So again, yeah. One thing I actually just noticed with these two, I was kind of looking at, this one has kind of there's actually even a slight variation in the nose design on the trucks. I thought they were all the same. These two, yeah, the Benson one and the Benson and the Rodney Combs are the same, but the Rodney Combs and the Bradbury are different. Here, I'll show, I don't know if this is going to show very well on camera. See, the nose designs are a little different. There you go. Yeah, see, those are actually different. Like, little details like that are crazy. Like, I don't know if one's supposed to be a Peterbilt and there's a Mack or something or what. I literally never noticed that until I picked these up. I thought they were all literally the same. But you got kind of that difference, too. So, these are real hip. They totally need to, they need to make way more of these. I mean, don't tell me, I mean, if you made like a next-gen version of this, and you had still kind of that standard size hauler. And it was mentioned, the other thing that was kind of reminding me of this, somebody posted a tweet earlier this week where they were buying a William Byron hauler and said that they finally started making ones that looked more like the actual haulers, where it would have kind of like this, where it's the big logo for the company and the car number, but not really like pictures of the car itself or something for a custom paint scheme. I mean, that's really hip. I mean, I think that should be the direction they go, and actually having the real small. You can even kind of see the logo for the team on the door of the actual truck, if we can get that in focus there. There you go, kind of like on there on the door. But yeah. Now here's a little feature. I might do some kind of video on this probably further down the line. So before the internet. Now, I mean, this is 97, so I mean, you pretty much had you had Net 1.0 at this point. But at a time where you say you want to know like which other cars or which paint schemes that Racing Champions made back then. And they were pretty much the biggest game in town around this time. Around this time is when Hot Wheels started doing them too. So Racing Champions used to have like a checklist on the back. Like if you look at something from like the early 90s, it'll actually have a check of all the names. It wouldn't say what the paint schemes were, but it'll say like, you collect all these drivers, and it'll have like Chuck Bown or Larry Pearson or any of these other drivers there. The thing that and probably the reason I'm wearing these glasses now is what, when they phased out the checklist and they just replaced it with this, and they have all these rights that they bought, these licensing rights from all these different teams and manufacturers. And this was about the only way that you could see what other cars they were making at the time. And I remember buying these back then. I would usually save the back of the cover here because you could actually see based on which sponsors or drivers' licenses they bought. So I'm kind of reading this off here. So let's see. We got NASCAR, Chevrolet, Ford, and then it's alphabetical. So you got Aquafresh and Buckshot Racing. So there's a Buckshot Jones one. You got Barbasol from Pfizer Company, so like at Elton Sawyer. You got Bear and Alka-Seltzer and Terry Labonte's likeness. Bell South trademark, Cartoon Network, Cat and Caterpillar, Channel Lock, Circuit City, Citgo, Close Call, Deere and Company, DeWalt, DuPont, Exide Batteries, FINA, First Union, Helig Myers, and so forth. I mean, basically, it's like a list of just every license that they paid for, and so they're going to get a return on their investment. They're going to have to make something in that, and usually whatever they put on the back of this. So that probably more than likely there's going to be a Helig Myers paint scheme. There's going to be a First Union version. There's going to be a DuPont version. So there's going to be Jeff Gordon. There's Deere and Company. So there's going to be Chad Little. Does anybody else, maybe our older viewers in here, did you ever have that you usually did that? Because I know that was something I looked at this and I remember that immediately, and it probably won't show well on camera at all because the font is really tiny. But if you screen cap that, you can kind of see some of the licensing ones there, and that's kind of the interesting aspect with racing versus anything else is that you do have literally all these other companies that were involved. And back then when they were full-time sponsors, so the car would be around long enough to actually make die-cast or little mini haulers or anything like that. So that was always something that was a kick. So I definitely wanted to show that on the show here this evening. Yeah, best going off of the Johnny Lightning 24 Hours of Lemons line. I haven't even looked those up. That's pretty cool. International and Kenworth. Good catch, RD Fox. Yeah, so they do talk about the different manufacturers for the trucks. So, so maybe that's why you have the two different designs. Or did you already notice that from the noses, RD Fox? I'm not sure, but yeah. One's a Ford and another is a Kenworth. Or Kenworth, excuse me, Charles. One's a Kenworth International. Oh, wow, we got a lot of people that are really getting into trucks. Okay, right on. Excellent. Alrighty then. So let's do, now we got inspection results in, so we will have a Truex article tonight. We've already finished up with that portion of it. I got you guys watching the football game there, right on. Awesome. Let's see, which category did we pick up here? Let me put the Nadu hauler over here. Oops, there we go. Put you right over there. All right. I'm using the touchpad. I'm usually not a big fan of that. 2, 3, 4 for wild card. Oh, there you go. You got a Hut Strickland version. Very nice. Very nice. There we go. Yeah. Always antique shops are always like a gold mine for this. You'll be surprised how much racing stuff shows up alongside old dishes or records. That was the case for this one. I walked by this place constantly after lunch. And went by there this time, and they had like a few of these there, so that was pretty crazy. All right, we'll do some wild card questions here to wrap up for tonight. All right. What country music singer was a NASCAR Winston Cup driver from 1966 through 1982? What country music singer was a NASCAR Winston Cup driver from 1966 through 1982? That is the first question. What country music singer was a NASCAR Winston Cup driver from 1966 through 1982? And again, if you guys have any other questions for the race weekend or anything else I covered on the show, definitely let me know. All right. And I haven't forgotten about doing some streams here with NASCAR Classics. We'll probably do that over the off season now that we're wrapping up the last couple months here. It's been pretty. I'll probably focus more on getting the videos produced here between now and championship weekend. But then after that, I'd like to do some of that. I think that would be a lot of fun, especially for those of you who are much younger fans. We'll probably pull up maybe some early 90s stuff. Maybe if there's something I could bring up from some firsthand memories from it or anything else that I've found to kind of bring that into the show there. If you guys are interested in that, I think that'd be great for the off season, and then we could do that. Alrighty, what country music singer was a NASCAR Winston Cup driver from 1966 through 1982? And the answer is indeed Marty Robbins, 611 Hornet. You got it. So did Kevin Love, others there as well. All right. Let's see. Nope, that one's too easy. That was just incorrect. That was, you had one, I skipped over here. It said, like, what year was Dale Earnhardt's Pass in the Grass? And it said 1989. That's not correct. That's Darrell Waltrip and Rusty Wallace. All right, here we go. Actually, this ties in with the Benson thing. What was the official pace car at the 1995 Brickyard 400? What was the official pace car at the 1995 Brickyard 400? Oh, there we go. R.D. Fox mentioning the licenses in the original NASCAR racing instruction manual. Very cool. Yep, same kind of thing. See, I didn't think I was the only one doing that. Because, yeah, I mean, you would, when you didn't have, like, an eBay listing or, like, a website. I mean, I guess there's a web. Is there a website on the back of this? No, not yet. Oh, no, there it is. Yeah, racingchamps.com. There it is. Okay, so, yeah. So we're talking... So, I mean, NASCAR's website was like 95, 96. So, yeah, 97 would fit the timeline. What was the official pace car at the 1995 Brickyard 400? I hope the sound quality is better, too. I moved the mic to the middle between the second screen and here, whereas I usually always had it here just so it's out of the way, but I think this picks it up better, especially for the segment I did tonight. It wouldn't have worked with the microphone way over here. So... What was the official pace car at the 1995 Brickyard 400? I guess it's for Pontiac Firebird, Pontiac Grand Prix, Ford Thunderbird, Toyota Supra, Olds Aurora, my 2013 BMW, Monte Carlo. All right, let's see. What was the official pace car at the 1995 Brickyard 400? It was a Chevy truck. Chevy truck is the correct answer. Yeah. Those of you who guessed Firebird, I was guessing you guys were right. Chevy truck is the correct answer. All right. Let's see. There we go, kind of on stick and ball sports being the topic of the day here. Let's jump into this one. What is Kenny Wallace's favorite baseball team? Not football, but there you go. What is Kenny Wallace's favorite baseball team? righty. What is Kenny Wallace's favorite baseball team is the question. Yeah, I've looked into local tracks there for PA stuff. It always seems like I would get that people would be very protective of what what they have, and especially what audience they have and everything. We just haven't met nose to nose yet on that. But you never know. You never know. I think. Well, the other problem is I saw that video that Rick Benjamin did earlier this week. Again, Rick Benjamin, for those of you who don't know, big time voice on, I believe, TBS. He did a lot of NASCAR play-by-play back then. Later on, I think I can't hear the name Gary Saint Amant without hearing it in his name, because he was big with, I think, ASA by the early 2000s. He said that, look, anybody that's interested in getting in the profession of like doing play-by-play, he always suggests people don't do it, because it's just changed so much. But that's the thing, it's, the positions are still out there, but I mean, in the short track circles, it's just not a sustainable profession, which is unfortunate. Now, I mean, again, I think realistically, I think most people have second jobs in something else. And I think that would be probably the same if I ever did do that, but you never know. You never know. What's Kenny Wallace's favorite baseball team? I guess it's for Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals from Missouri. So Cardinals, Cubs. Alrighty. Whoop, hang on. Let me turn that over. And the answer is indeed the St. Louis Cardinals. Correct. A lot of you got that. Too easy. Wallace City Motor Mouths. I like that, Kevin. Right on. Alrighty. We'll probably just do one more question. We're already over 2 hours here on the show tonight. We'll just do one more to wrap up this evening. Alrighty. So last question for the evening here, folks. This is another sponsorship question. What is the name of the rooster on Terry Labonte's number 5 Chevrolet? What is the name of the rooster on Terry Labonte's number 5 Chevrolet? Yeah, as a hobby, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think realistically, there's some industries are just so competitive that, it's there. Probably got a whole line of people that, can do it very well. So, but you never know. You never know. What is the name of the rooster on Terry Labonte's number 5 Chevy? I guess this is for Cornelius and Corny and Lycos and Tyler Reddick. With a lot of ease. Cornelius the Rooster. I thought this one would be more challenging for you guys. What is the name of the rooster? Terry Labonte's number 5 Chevy. And the answer is indeed Cornelius. You got it. Corny is also correct. That was the one I was going with. I remember more Corny there. So with you, Spencer Standlin, for sure. Corny is the Cornelius, rather, the full name. The proper name. His birth name. There you go. When he was an egg or whatever. Okay. Well, anyway, that will do it for our show tonight, folks. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Congratulations to this weekend's winner, including Tyler Reddick, officially now your race winner today in Kansas. And again, last place article on Martin Truex Jr. will be up later tonight. We have an entry list storylines article will be up earlier this week because of the action starting on Thursday at Bristol. With the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and the Cup Series this week. In the meantime, the Patreon is patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. Twitter feed or X feed is @LastCarOnBrock. This channel, of course. Feel free to check out the videos on this channel, including the most recent episode of Rise of the Field Fillers that came out this week. In the meantime, our next show is going to be next Saturday night after the Bristol night race at Thunder Valley or near Thunder Valley. And we will talk about all the action on the short tracks, see who is at the top of the junk pile at the end of the weekend or who finishes in last place, and we'll sum it up here on the show. So see you next week on Saturday. In the meantime, have a great week. Hey, have a safe week out there, folks, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for tuning in.